a covenant of thorns. The word of the Lord came to Hosea ben Beeri not as a scroll unrolled, but as a wound, deep and irrevocable. It was not a command to speak, but to become. Go. The voice was a fire in his bones, an ache in his spirit. Take to yourself an adulterous wife and children of unfaithfulness, for the land is guilty of the vilest adultery in departing from the Lord. Hosea trembled. He was a man of order, of careful thought, of the clean lines of the law. This instruction was a violation of all three. Yet the compulsion was absolute. In the marketplace of Tirzah, he saw her, Gomer, daughter of Diblaim. Her eyes were not gentle pools but dark, glittering chalices, holding a mixture of defiance and deep hunger. Her laughter was too loud, her posture a challenge. She was a woman on the edge of respectability, known, whispered about, the embodiment of wayward Israel. His heart did not leap with longing, but sank with a terrible understanding. This is the one. Their courtship was a town scandal. The righteous prophet, wedding the loose woman. The whispers were threads that bound them together in a tapestry of disgrace. In the quiet of their new home, there were moments of fragile, startling grace. She seemed stunned by his earnest kindness, by the way he looked at her not as an object, but as a person. He brought her a simple bracelet of silver, not a lover's trinket, but a sign of a covenant. For a season, she was his, and the joy was real, piercing in its sweetness. She bore him a son. Name him Jezreel, the Lord said, a name that recalled a valley of bloodshed and judgment. Hosea did so, the proclamation of doom falling from his lips in the tender act of naming his firstborn. A daughter followed. Lo Ruhamah, the Lord commanded. Not loved. Hosea held the tiny girl, his heart breaking as he whispered the cruel name over her soft head. Gomer flinched at the name. A hardness began to creep back into her eyes, a resentment. The prophetic act was no longer abstract. It was the child in her arms, declared unloved. With the birth of a second son, Lo-Ammi, not my people, something in Gomer snapped, or perhaps simply reverted. The house, once filled with a tentative peace, became a cage. The names of her children were curses. Her husband's love felt heavy, demanding, a constant reproach to the wildness she missed. The world outside, with its fleeting pleasures and false freedoms, called to her. She began to slip away, first in spirit, then in body. Hosea watched the light in her eyes gutter and die, replaced by a restless, calculating gleam. She left for a night, then two, returning with the scent of other men and cheap wine on her skin. Her excuses were thin veils over brazen lies. Each return was slower, each departure more final. Finally, she did not return at all. The pain for Hosea was a compound fracture of the soul. There was the personal, humiliating agony of a betrayed husband. There was the fierce, protective grief of a father whose children asked for their mother. And layered over it all, the searing, prophetic clarity. This is how the Lord feels. Every time he heard a report of her, seen with a merchant from Damascus, dancing in a Philistine tavern, it was a revelation of Israel's idolatry. Her pursuit of lovers who gave her trinkets in exchange for her soul was Judah offering incense to Baal for imagined harvests. Her belief that her bread and water, her wool and linen, came from these paramours was Israel thanking carved wood and stone for the blessings of Yahweh. The Lord spoke again, and the words were salt in Hosea's wounds. Go, show your love to your wife again, though she is loved by another and is an adulteress. Love her as the Lord loves the Israelites, though they turn to other gods. Hosea wanted to rage, to bury his pain in righteousness. He had obeyed. He had loved. He had been made a fool. Yet the divine imperative was not about his dignity, but about a love that refuses to be extinguished. He began to search. He found her in the slave market of Ashkelon. She was not on a platform, but huddled against a wall, being examined by a bored-looking trader. The vibrant defiance was gone, extinguished. Her beauty, once so weaponized, was gaunt and drained. Her eyes were empty wells. She was a used commodity, discarded by the very lovers she had chosen over his covenant. She did not see him at first. A crushing weight of emotions fell on Hosea, pity so profound it was pain, anger at her ruin, a husband's longing. And the clear, terrible voice of God, "This is my people." Stripped, ashamed, believing they are alone. He approached the trader. How much for the woman? Gomer's head snapped up, recognition, then a tsunami of shame. She tried to shrink into the wall, to disappear. 15 shekels of silver, and a homer and a lethek of barley, the man grunted, naming a paltry sum for a life. Hosea counted out the silver. It was the price of a slave, a broken thing. He gathered the barley, the staple of life. He placed it all in the trader's hands. He did not look at the man, only at Gomer. He walked to her, stepping between her and the crowd. He did not embrace her. He spoke, his voice low, trembling with the effort of prophecy and personal agony. You will live with me many days. You must not be a prostitute or be intimate with any man, and I will behave the same way toward you. They were terms of quarantine, of a severe, healing mercy. Not a triumphant reunion, but a painful restoration. He was buying her back, redeeming her, but not for what they were. For what, by grace, they might become. The walk home was silent. She was a ghost beside him. He brought her not to their marital chamber, but to a separate room, clean and spare. Stay here, he said, the words both a sentence and a sanctuary. Days turned to weeks. He provided food, clothing, silence. The children, confused and hurt, were kept at a gentle distance. He was healing a feral, wounded creature, and healing himself of bitterness. He would sit nearby, sometimes speaking not to her, but of the Lord's love for Israel, a love that pursues into the wilderness, that speaks tenderly to a heart that has forgotten how to hope. One evening, as he sat mending a cloak, she spoke, her voice a rustle of dry leaves. Why? He set down the needle. Because the Lord said to me, love her as I love Israel. I am not Israel that I am just broken. So is Israel, he said, and so was I. It was not a fairy tale ending. The trust returned grain by grain, slower than the barley grew in the field. The name Gomer meant complete, but she would be incomplete, bearing the scars of her choices for the rest of her life. Hosea's love was no longer the bright, hopeful thing of their youth. It was something tougher, more terrible, and more holy, a deliberate, dogged fidelity, a mirror held up to the heavens. He wrote the words the Lord gave him, words now etched with the acid of personal experience. I will betroth you to me forever. I will betroth you in righteousness and justice, in love and compassion. I will betroth you in faithfulness, and you will acknowledge the Lord. In the quiet house, Gomer would hear him reciting these words, and a tear, the first of true repentance, not of self-pity, would trace the path down her cheek. She was learning, achingly slowly, that the love she had fled was the only love that could truly make her whole. And Hosea, the prophet who became his own parable, learned that God's most powerful word is sometimes not spoken from a pulpit, but lived in the painful, redeeming silence of a love that will not let go. Follow for more interesting stories.